It's 2026 and the maps keep on changing. Welcome to the new Change in the Map, the series dedicated to talking about geopolitical changes to the world map. Not even a full week into the new year, we have two new stories. One change that is complete and another that is a bit more up in the air. Firstly, longtime watchers of this series are familiar with how the nations of Indonesia and Egypt have started to move their capitals to new locations, built from the ground up years ago, and years later have still not finished the job. Well, there was another country that was also moving their capital, but they started the process all the way back in 2012, 6 years before this series even started, Equatorial Guinea. Just last year, the previous episode in this series discussed Equatorial Guinea winning a long-time international dispute with its neighbor of Gabon over a few islands. Now, they have reportedly finished transferring their capital. Previously, the small African nation had its capital in the city of Malabo on the island of Bioko. However, in the early 2010s, the country decided it wanted a new planned city that could be a new capital, and it would be more ideally located in the middle of their mainland territory. The initial name for this planned city was Oyala, which is what previous articles had referred to it as, but in 2017 this planned city was officially given the name of Ciudad de la Paz, which is Spanish for City of Peace. This is not to be confused with La Paz, Bolivia, as that city's full name is Nuestra Señora de la Paz, which translates to Our Lady of Peace. Finally, on Friday, January 2nd, 2026, a ceremony was held to officially proclaim Ciudad de la Paz as the new capital, ending nearly 15 years of transition. What about Indonesia and Egypt's new capital projects? Well, both cities have had many things built, and in both cases, the current governments have begun doing ceremonies and some duties there, but they are still not officially capital cities yet. Indonesia's current goal for their new capital city's completion is 2028, while Egypt doesn't appear to have a planned completion date yet, so we'll see how it goes. Although, apparently, back in November, Egypt changed the name of their planned city from New Administrative Capital to The New Capital. Okay then. This episode's main story, however, involves the Middle Eastern nation of Yemen potentially splitting. Since 2014, Yemen has been embroiled in a complicated civil war that would take too long to fully explain here. But since 2017, one of the factions in the civil war has been the Southern Transitional Council, which have supported secession for the southern two-thirds of Yemen into its own nation. Or rather, back into its own nation, as southern Yemen was originally its own separate nation known as the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen between 1967 when it achieved independence from the British Empire and 1990 when it unified with northern Yemen. During the Cold War, it was a Marxist country, and in a similar story to many other African and Middle Eastern Marxist nations, went unstable after a civil war and the ending of Soviet and Eastern Bloc support. However, just 4 years after unification in 1990, there was already a civil war in 1994 where the South tried to secede, and they failed. Separatist feelings have clearly not gone away, and in the current ongoing civil war, the STC did at one point side with the internationally recognized Yemeni government with the hopes that maybe there'd be future southern autonomy or something similar once the war is over. But in the fall of 2025, they pivoted to a total secessionist stance. They saw the wars going nowhere, and the Houthi faction controlled so much of northern Yemen that, well, maybe officially splitting was their best option going forward. Then in December of 2025, they launched a military offensive that did end up taking most of southern Yemen. On January 3rd of 2026, they published a constitutional declaration of the South Arabia state. However, as if politics weren't already confusing enough, the leader said that this was a constitution meant to be in effect for 2 years before there'd be a referendum on exercising the right of self-determination for the people of the South, but threatening to enact this constitution anyway if dialogue doesn't go well. So, despite declaring independence, they're not officially declaring independence yet. I'm just as confused as you are. However, a counteroffensive by the official Yemeni government right after this declaration took place has retaken large portions of the east, and while most of this territory is desert, it does weaken the STC's position. But at the very least, the possibility of southern Yemen's return appears to be, well, very possible. And that'll conclude this episode of New Change in the Map. If you like this series and want to help keep it going, you can support my channel through Patreon. Every little bit helps. I'm Emperor Tiger Star, and I'll see you guys next time.